Konnichiwa.
Howdy, y'all.
I'm Leslie.
I'm Laurie. Welcome to
Sumo Kaboom.
Sumo Kaboom,
where we talk about all things sumo.
That is right, and there's only one story this week. Only one. Because it took over all of the airwaves, all of the air in the room.
Oh,
so we got to talk about
gosh.
it. We have to talk about the scandal at the Miyagino stable.
Yes, but first, I have a tiny bit of news. Again, I have no idea what's going on at Miyagino until we talk about it.
Strange things are afoot at the Miyagino stable.
One thing that is not strange, which is the actual best news of the week that I've heard, is that they are going to have EMT technicians like under the ring or like on the sidelines at like they have like downstairs, I think. That's what they
I'm sorry, the image in my mind was them like clay, like
little
someone
like little rats
embedded in the clay.
You know what? I would go for that. But anyway, they're going to be either like on the side of the ring or like on hand from now into the future,
Fabulous.
starting in March. EMT technicians that are there to assist with all injuries.
Good. They can at least hold someone's head.
Yes. I'm glad it took them for friggin' ever to figure out that you can train all the coaches you want in first aid, but that does not equal an actual EMT technician.
It sounds like the kind of press release you would have after a week of scandal. That's what that was.
There might be like somebody who's like, we gotta do something.
That's right.
That we know the people want. So let's throw this out there. Well, it made me happy. It still did not balance out the bad news of this week, but here we are. So shall we jump to, oh wait, you did hear that Tochinoshin got divorced? You saw the article.
I saw the article that said Tochinoshin got divorced and has been seen with a new man, with a new... It didn't even say wife. It said divorced and married a new man.
It could be a horror husband.
That's
Who knows?
right. And I thought that's probably a bad translation. But
because we've seen him pictured with a lady.
Yeah, a lady that we didn't recognize. And we
Right.
thought she looks different than the picture of his wife that we've seen before. And that article just explained, oh, so maybe he got divorced. I only saw one article, and I like to see articles in 2 or 3 different places before I know for sure that has happened.
Right.
So I just sprinkle that out there.
Right.
Maybe that's gossip.
It could be gossip.
I don't know.
But it also could be like new life, new wife, because he did just retire.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I have been waiting to get divorced from my sumo associated wife that was chosen for me by my oyakata. And now that I am retired, I can choose my own wife.
Well, I think perhaps it's the other way.
It might.
He had his other wife that was in Georgia that he never saw, who had the child. And when he retired, he was like, you know what? Why not get one that the JSA has picked for me that lives here, and it's like a lot easier? Perhaps. I don't know. I'm making all of this up.
This is all Tochi gossip
Yep.
we don't know anything about. And so that's why we're reporting on it.
That's right. And hopefully we'll have more clarifying info on that. Because I spent the last few days researching a different story.
Yes.
I just sort of happened upon that news and thought, oh, that's funny. I'm going to ask Leslie if she saw any more about that.
No.
But okay.
Perhaps it's time to jump to the heavy part of our show. But let's
is
talk
right.
about what everybody is talking about.
The story this week was that Hokuseiho, remember that wrestler? Hokuseiho submitted his retirement to the JSA this week at the ripe old age of 22. Not because of injury, not because he's homesick, not because he wants to start a restaurant.
That's right.
But
Scandal.
because the JSA would have fired him anyway.
That's right. It is a scandal of mega proportions.
Yeah. This week, wearing a brown yukata and bowing deeply in front of the stable, along with his stable master Hakuho, he appeared in the January Basho as Maegashira 8. Mm-hmm. He stood next to Hakuho, bowed deeply, and stated, I deeply regret having used violence against my stablemates. You will not see his name on the Banzuke for the March tournament. He is not on the JSA website.
He's actually, he got
gone.
bumped to the Jurio one.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think I saw the Jurio. So they've just flat out taken him out and then bumped him down to maybe, let me double check.
Yeah. Double check, because I only checked the top.
He should be at the top, although he did pull out.
Even if he missed 10 days of the tournament, he should still be in the top division. He should not have fallen to Jurio, even with that record.
He is Jurio 3.
Oh.
4.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay. Well, never mind. So he is on the Batsuke.
Yeah, but he will not be performing.
No. He is never to be seen again in sumo, y'all. Why? Because I'm going to tell you the story.
I feel like we should put some sinister music right here.
This is a return to sumo crime time.
I know.
I thought I was done with it, but I'm not.
I am. Well, and I mean, I hate these stories. I never want to make light of them.
Yeah.
Because there's real people who are real victims of this. So it's not anything to joke about, but it's like this big ugly thing that I have to stare at when I love the sport so much. I have to continually stare at this big ugly bruise.
Yeah.
And it just continues to be like this thing that no one ever tends to, or they half-ass say they tend to it. The only thing about this whole thing is just how the punishment came down, and they seem to mean business. Now, took them a while to announce it all, but we'll get to all of that in a second. But it is always it just breaks my heart every time we hear a story like this, because we always hope that violence does not continue in the stables. And here we are, behind closed doors, all kinds of things happen. And us innocent fans who love the sport are always like, oh man, it's just a black eye on the sport. Literally, it's awful.
Yeah. So here's what went down. Before the January Basho this year, before the 2024 Basho, relatives of a junior wrestler at the Miyagino stable made a complaint about bullying to the JSA. So I don't know if it was parents, siblings of a kid who was there. Somebody's family said something is wrong. Right. Something is going wrong. My kid is being bullied. And they said, we've talked to Hakuho about this and nothing has changed. So the JSA said, great. Not great. I mean, they said, okay, we will start an investigation and we will hold some meetings with everyone at the stable. So that's what they did. They called Hakuho in, they called Hokuseiho in, they called everybody in the stable in to start having discussions. And this is before the Basho began.
Right.
So on the 5th day of that January Basho, Hokuseiho withdrew after winning his match.
Right. And
he withdrew without a doctor's note, which was kind of odd. And his stable master came out, I think like the next day, and said, Hokuseiho's right knee has gotten worse. He's not going to be returning to the tournament. Mm-hmm. And Hokuseiho annexed that next day that he had suffered a meniscus injury and was planning to have surgery February 5th. So we all thought, okay.
Well, that makes sense. It checks out.
Yeah, he's got knee problems, so he's going to have surgery. Well, that's a bummer for him. He's going to have like a month of rehab. So that will be his February, okay? But strangely, come February 5th, he had not had that surgery. So people were like, something's a little strange.
Yeah, all this is not quite adding up.
Yeah, and so as that's happening, all these rumors are starting to fly. And they're not coming from, okay, so there's there's media that's assigned to Heias that, they sort of give official sumo media coverage.
On behalf of the JSA.
Yes.
Like it's rosy.
Yeah, well, yeah, they have to maintain good relationships with the Heias,
right.
Okay?
Yes.
So when they start to hear negative rumors and the JSA is having committee meetings about something that might be going wrong, they can't officially give the story until the committee comes out and says, here's what we found, okay? But what they can do is they can talk to their buddies at the tabloids and say, here's the rumors that we're hearing. This is what is happening. I can't report on it yet, But if you can find more info and you can get more of this story, then go with it.
Right.
So that is what started to fly.
And that's what people started to rumble about a while ago.
Yeah.
And we don't pay attention to that because it's rumblings and it's tabloid and we don't always value tabloid fodder. But yeah.
So the tabloids started super sleuthing and talking to people, probably off the record, and being like, can you tell us what's happening? Can you please tell us what's happening?
When you think about it, it's a small organization. I know that a lot of people, they know each other's business.
Oh, yeah. So as these rumors started to fly, all these people started to suspect that Hokuseiho's withdrawal was not about the knee, actually, at all.
Right.
And especially as February rolled around and it got to like February 21st and he still had not had the operation and was seen walking around.
Well, he was at the Hakuho Cup, wasn't
No,
he?
he wasn't.
He wasn't.
He did not show up to the Hakuho. It was strangely absent.
Was it the bean thing that he was at?
No, he was just seen walking around the Kokugikon for other things.
Okay.
But he was not at the Hakuho Cup.
Official stuff. Okay.
So the rumors that started to fly was that he had assaulted several stablemates and had stolen money from them.
Mm-hmm.
And this investigation was being held to verify the claims.
Right.
So what did this investigation find out? Well, that is what was happening.
Right.
And so much more. So for over a year, Hokuseiho basically had been running that stable. Miyagino was not around as often as he perhaps should be.
Been.
He was doing other things.
Right.
I'm sure, doing lots of press and, doing lots of other things. But basically he had left Hokuseiho in charge a lot of the time. But Hokuseiho was spending his weeks slapping his junior wrestlers 2 to 3 times a week across the face, across the back, in the testicles. He was hitting them with broom handles across their butts. He was threatening them with homemade flamethrowers made of insecticide bottles and a lighter.
Yeah,
he
sounds like a psychotic nut job.
Yeah, he was coming close to burning them. He was stealing money from them. He was super gluing a junior wrestler's wallet together to make it useless. He was putting, some of these just seem
on earbuds.
Yes, super glue on earbuds, on people's hands, on people's fingers. He was just doling out beatings with makeshift clubs. And then the tabloids have even that comes from the official committee. Now, the tabloids have also said, well, he was doing more than that. He was locking people in the toilets for 3+ hours. He was forcing younger Rikishi to eat 20 hamburgers at a time. He was not well liked at all. And many of the younger wrestlers left the Heya specifically because of him and how he was treating people.
And nothing was happening.
Nothing. Yeah.
And
nobody was fixing it.
I had heard one thing where he had stolen wallets. The wallets were given to the younger wrestlers by Ochiai or Hakuho.
Yeah.
And then he realized that they hadn't been stolen. So he went out and then bought the younger wrestlers the exact same wallet. So it's like, in the middle of this, you think of Hakuho, who's also a new young up-and-comer, and he's sitting there kind of under the shadow of Hokuseiho, which is bizarre because they're like the same age, or it just blows my mind that there was no coming to heads of that. I'm sure he was probably interviewed too. I'm sure everybody in the whole Heya was interviewed. I just how does that go on? Is there no kami-san? There are other coaches, right? And you'll get to the brawl between Hokuseiho and, who was it, Ishiura?
I'm actually not even covering that.
Oh.
No.
But I think there was one, right? There was a brawl between Ishiura and
let's just say
Hokuseiho.
that tempers flared.
Yeah.
Between coaches and Hokuseiho, between coaches, I'm sure a lot of things were happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, really. I tried to just focus more on the investigation report that came out and maybe build on it with what the tabloids said.
Wow.
Basically, all of this stuff came out. None of it sounds great. It sounds violent. It sounds like an awful environment. And it was either really hard to get Hokuseiho to stop doing it, or no one wanted to admit it. And everybody was just trying to survive.
Right.
But the important piece of it is Hokuseiho admitted to this violence.
Right.
And basically said, I don't want to get fired. I'm going to retire, probably allowing him to keep some of his earnings that he has made to the JSA. I don't exactly know how all of that works. But what it comes down to is God bless family members who protect their kids and who are like, something is not right and I'm going to keep talking to people until we get this fixed. God bless them, and God bless the tabloids for getting all of this out in public and putting more pressure on the JSA to investigate quickly, because it's remarkably quick. In like
in a consensus culture, it is.
It is. Just
even
a couple
though,
months.
Like most people would be like gone the next day, you know,
well,
the first time.
I mean, you got to talk to people. You got to have all your investigations. Blah, blah, blah. So I get that. But long story short, this abuse had been happening for over a year and a half.
Wow.
And it took them just like 6 weeks to have all the investigations and to get rid of Hokuseiho. So if you're not familiar with Hokuseiho, he was born in Mongolia. He moved to Japan at the age of 5, and he's basically grown up Japanese.
Right. Hakuho has had an eye on this young kid since there's like a picture of them when Hokuseiho's like a little boy. He's been keeping an eye on him.
Yeah, they met each other as Hokuseiho was making a return trip home to Mongolia in an airport. They had a chance meeting at an airport, and Hakuho encouraged him to try sumo. And he basically did sumo all through elementary school, junior high, high school. At one point, he quit because he found the sumo training way too intense. Hakuho encouraged him to return. He went to Totori High School, known for its strong sumo program, again on Hakuho's recommendation. Right. He won several high school sumo competitions, and after graduating high school, he joined the Miyagino stable with Hakuho. He was the tallest rikishi in the top division. He's 6'8". He rose quickly through the ranks, and he's really known as Hakuho's protege. He started pro sumo in 2020, and he won the championships in Jonokuchi, Jonidan, Sandanme, and Makushita. And he basically, we've been watching him for about a year in the top division. His last year, he was rated as Maegashira 15, 11, 6, 11, 7, and 8. So not earth-shattering results, but certainly good enough to keep competing and developing as a wrestler. Right. As he should have. He doesn't have stellar, results, and a lot of people don't love watching him wrestle because he's leaner. He does. Hakuho didn't even like that. He was like, why are you just leaning on people? Like, bend your knees, get in there, push people out. So he's strangely not aggressive in the ring, but maybe he just seems to be a big old bully at the stable. Anyway. So that's the basic story of what went down. The biggest question is, what about Hakuho? Right. Where was he? What was his part in all of this? Basically, he wasn't there. He was not there when, it sounds like when the bullying started, he wasn't even the oyakata. He didn't have full charge of his stable when the bullying started. Okay. And the other stable master is gone, and the committee has said, since the other guy's gone, we need to punish someone. Right. So it's your fault, even though you weren't there in the beginning. Yeah. Now it continued, and probably those parents talked to Hakuho, and who knows what happened from then on, whether he just ignored them or whether he said this happens at all the same, whatever. Right. He has said that he didn't know. He didn't know what was happening. And he has officially said, I feel heavy responsibility for being unable to protect the abused proteges. I'm so sorry for causing concern to the Sumo Association fans and those who support me. So we don't really know how much he knew. They're not really telling us that. The investigation committee isn't telling us that. Right. We also don't know, because there's been 3 other stables that have gone through investigations and their coaches have been demoted fairly recently. So we don't know if this is just the kind of stuff that happens at every stable. Right. And this is just one that is just the most recent one that's going through the committee. Or we don't know if it's, historical. There's a guy from Miyagino stable who gosh, he just went through the court system in 2015. He was a stable master at Miyagino, but Hakuho's former coach, known as stable master Kumagatani, but there's also known as Yamamura. I want to make sure I get that right. He was at Miyagino when Hakuho was a yokozuna, used to regularly use baseball bats, hit his driver on the arms with a hammer. He was given a suspended prison sentence in 2015 for not only that, but saying things to his juniors like, okay, you're in trouble. I can break a bone. I can make you eat a mountain of wasabi. I can break a tooth. You choose your punishment. He was known for beating people, shoving towels in their mouth,
This is a coach?
placing needles under their fingernails,
Oh, God.
threatening to bore out their eyeballs, taking their testicles. He was a great guy, match fixer. I mean,
Yeah, he sounds like an angel.
exactly. It doesn't mean Hakuho does that at
Right.
all, but it means that people in that stable when Hakuho was there were doing that sort of thing.
That's the thing. Of course, you're going to blame Hokuseiho, but where did Hokuseiho learn that? It's a cycle of abuse. And that's exactly what this whole sumo system has been about. A system of abuse in some ways to get results. Not every oyakata is like that, but you cannot deny that early on, 70s, 80s, and way before that, I know it, that was the way it operated. And now they're getting caught, and the JSA is a public entity now. And it kind of functions unlike anything else, where they're public, but they also operate by their own rules. Well, a publicly owned entity cannot have this degree of abuse within their system. It's the same as any other government category of business. So what I'm trying to say is sumo is in this weird in-between category where they're not supposed to be like they used to be, but then they almost can't be what the standard is for everybody else. And because of that, we have a lot of gray areas, and this is one of them specifically. So Hokuseiho learned this from a system that was well in place, and obviously, as you've mentioned, some psycho nut job from the past at Miyagino that either Hakuho was used to or they're all used to. And these young kids are like, no, this is not normal.
Well, let's hope the reason that guy was in the court system was because that was far out of the ordinary.
Yeah. But
right?
there's got to be accountability.
We know there have been fingers into the mob. We know there's been a lot of sketchy stuff that has existed around the edges of the sumo world for ages.
Yeah. For ages.
And my great takeaway is my takeaway is they are trying to fix this. They really, really are.
Yeah. But that's
great.
Deep. And
if they had given him a slap on the wrist, that would be worse.
Right.
If they had said, just stay here, take
But that's
take
what they just
off.
did to Isagahama Oyakata. It was his stable that had the most recent abuse.
Right.
So what I want to talk about is Hakuho. Now, he is an oyakata. Whenever you retire as a yokozuna, especially a yokozuna who has a zillion tournaments under his belt, you have the opportunity to join into the elder system with stock that is obviously purchased, which is very hard to get. There's only 105 elder names, elder stocks that you can have. And you can't run a stable. All those 105 guys, they can't all run a stable. So it's a very limited amount of guys who have reached a status upon retiring from sumo that are allowed to run a stable. So there have only been 3 guys in the past, Taiho being one of them, who assumed a stable under their own name, right? And you have to have all these winnings to be able to qualify for that. And when Hakuho retired, all of a sudden the JSA committee said, oh, no, you can't do that. And it should be mentioned, trust me, I am on the side of punishing those who should be punished in this event. But I will say that Hakuho has been treated differently because he is the winningest of all time, and he is a Mongolian, and he marches to the beat of his own drum and has turned up his nose at the JSA consistently.
And I get a sense that a lot of those guys don't really like him.
Yeah. And I don't know why, other than...
I can imagine.
He doesn't play by their rules.
Yeah.
Even though the country and the sport has given him everything, he's also given everything back to the sport and continues to by growing the sport. But it is a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
So upon his retirement, they were like, oh, you can't do that. Even though there's been 3 other guys, Chiyono Fuji being one of them. He's the only one who actually refused the Yokozuna Oyakata name. He decided to become Kokanoe. But the others, Taiho, and I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head, they created stables under their name. So JSA was like, oh, that system doesn't exist anymore. No explanation, but just right at the time when Hakuho would have been given that opportunity.
Yeah, I remember that.
So when you are a Yokozuna, and one especially like him, you join a system of elders. There's 7 levels. And at the top of this level is basically Hakaku, the JSA, the chief. There's one guy, right? Yeah. And another thing to mention, when I looked at the ranks of who all the higher ranked guys are, all of them are 60 years old.
Sure.
So all the guys that are on these committees came up in sumo in a real brutal time. So I imagine they have a really hard time understanding these young kids who have complaints. So there is some change. I just imagine it's really hard convincing guys that came up in a more brutal system that this is extremely brutal. So when you're a Yokozuna and become an Oyakata, you come in at a committee level. And that has its own privileges. That means you can have your own stable. Most other guys that don't have Yokozuna status or Ozeki status, they come in at la Toshiori, the elder status. And that is the status that you see the guys sitting in the Hanamichi, in the security suits. Even when you come in at the committee level, which is what... it's IIN. You come in at that level, you still have to sit at that security guard station, but you do come in with more privileges than all the other guys. That's mid-level. Above that are nominated somewhat, extremely elder guys that have been there for many years, and then those who have been nominated to those positions. So you're kind of at the top-ish level of the middle of the 7 ranked Toshiori system.
And so with higher ranking, you become committee chairs.
Exactly.
You run more power.
Yeah, exactly.
Run larger departments,
yes.
I would guess.
Yes.
And at the bottomest level,
you are an assistant coach.
You're an assistant coach.
That's basically what you can be.
At the lowest level.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I know all about oyakatas and wrestlers, but I know very little about these other 105, of all these coach names, these share names.
Yeah,
there's
so
105
confusing.
of them. And you can think of, okay, I recognize these big time coaches. Who are their assistant coaches?
Yeah.
Because what happens with Hakuho in all of this is that they demoted him from his committee level status to elder status. So they docked Hakuho's pay 20% for 3 months, which I was like, that's a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
But the biggest hubbub right now is, in all of this media scandal and publicity on this, people really feel like this is the end of that stable because they have assigned another coach, an assistant coach from within his Ichiman, from within his stable system, to basically come and take over his stable and show Hakuho how to coach champions to the next level. But a lot of people feel like this is a huge slap in the face because there's not an end date on it. It's some time which this guy's going to come in, and I have his name. Okay. He was a former komusubi. That was his highest level.
Can you imagine that's the komusubi coming in and teaching Hakuho?
Yeah. I mean, he's a much older guy.
Okay. So he has seniority.
Yeah. His oyakata name is Tamagaki. His real name is Shinya Narimatsu. He's from Oshima Stable, even though he came up and came up through Tatsunami Stable. He was about 5'9", a shorter guy, but he's 59 years old now. So
ancient.
In the world of sumo,
I'm only laughing because I'm getting closer to that every day.
But anyway, but he's been coaching for a really long time.
Okay.
I imagine that they have chosen somebody to be an example for Hakuho to learn from. That is somebody who is deserving of it in their eyes, a company man, and would, if Hakuho step away, be an incredible coach. So this guy is going to come in and be the mentor for Hakuho. So a lot of people feel like this is the end of Hakuho because he will have to swallow this pill for some indefinite period of time, having somebody else run his stable. And for all of the slights that the JSA has, I mean, there have been a lot, towards Hakuho. He either has to make a choice of, okay, clearly I need to get on the ball, be here all the time, watch over my wrestlers. But will he be able to hang on and swallow that pill for a period of time which has not been presented to him? He doesn't know if it's going to be a year, 2 year, 5 years.
Well, I think I happened upon an article in which and I can't remember which one it was. It's going to be in our show notes, but someone saying, it probably won't be long. It might just be 3 months that he'll have someone there and then he'll be back on his own and things will be back to normal.
I hope so.
Well, what's amazing is all this is happening as he's holding the Hakuho Cup. Right. He's doing all of this press for them,
they
bringing
need him.
Kids. And I also get the sense, he does that on his own.
Yeah.
I don't think, well, who knows how connected with the JSA that is. So he's able to keep a lot of balls in the air, I will say that.
Yeah. But again, we don't know. And that's been the biggest thing that's come out yesterday and today is everyone kind of going on about the severity of this oversight.
Yeah, because we really
don't
know.
understand that.
Yeah,
I'm oh, yeah, he just has like a parole. Or
yeah, he's
like
got a mentor right there next to him.
But like a probation.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a big deal to me. I'm like, wouldn't you want to have like an older gentleman there who's got all this experience coaching? Like, that sounds great to me. But I'm not Hakuho.
But exactly. That's the part we don't understand is like, has this happened before? Has anyone ever had to go in and say, I mean, it didn't happen to Isagahama. He's higher ranked, right?
Well, I need to go back and look at how much they demoted him for the violence in his stable. They gave him a cut pay, and then I think they demoted him maybe one, but I can't remember. But yeah, there was definitely punishment. Yeah. Well, this is what's so confusing to me looking at the Hakuho pieces. I know so little about what happens at all those levels of elder status. Well, and sometimes it just seems like it's not a big deal if they're taking only a fifth of your pay for 3 months and they've just demoted you and you can climb back up the ranks.
Right.
Is that a punishment? Doesn't sound like much.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe they really think he didn't know what was happening because he was gone. I don't know.
Well, the top 3 levels are ones that you have to that require a nomination, and you have to have election. You would be elected to one of the boards,
right? Can't imagine he's going to get elected to anything right now.
Not anytime soon.
No, not for a while.
He's
got to put his time in.
Yeah. Under that, there's called a Yakuin Taigo Ian, who's an executive member. And then under that is committee member. Then there's 2 other members, 2 other levels before that, and then Toshiori, which is bargain basement. Bargain basement oyakata.
Yeah.
I imagine that's grunt work. It's the people who are
emptying
taking
the trash. Actually,
it is.
What
it's
I heard.
Taking tickets, selling tickets. It's like
working at the merch store.
Yes.
That's also what I heard.
Which could benefit the hell out of them.
I would be at that merch store in March if Hakuho was selling me merchandise. I would be there every hour on the hour buying something new.
Right.
I really would be.
Well, I can tell you that Isagahama Oyakata is the one level above committee member, which is the Ian, I believe.
Okay.
And along with him, which I think was his demotion, because I'm pretty sure he was above that. Above that is like 10 or 12 guys who are like mostly faces you would definitely recognize as the most powerful wrestlers, oyakatas. Okay.
Yeah.
And then below them is everyone else. And we know in the system of sumo that that's the pecking order. And if you are at the bottom, you have no say. And that may be exactly where they want him. So to shut him up in some ways. I'm not trying to make the JSA evil. I'm just acknowledging the fact that this is a fraught relationship. It always has been. It has been well known in the public. They do not hide it in the way they speak about Hakuho and his behavior in the past. It's frosty. So it'll be a real question as to how he copes with this. And we'll find out.
My hope is that he's with his stable more often and he helps Hakuho get healthy and get back up where he belongs in that highest division. And they get that big old bully. The big old bully's gone. So maybe they all learn from each other. This is not how we treat each other anymore. Well, and
it's a huge slap on the wrist. I mean, this is the third most severe punishment. And the ones above them are retirement and immediate banishment from the sport.
Which is what Hokuseiho got.
Yeah, but like for oyakatas.
Oh, I see.
There's for the Toshiori system.
Got it.
This demotion puts him at the bottom. And it's the third most severe punishment after dismissal and recommendations to retire.
So it sounds like they think he should have known. Either he knew and he ignored it, or he should have known.
Right. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't know that. What I imagine is that he just brushed it off as big deal. And he's got a prize pony, and he does not care because he only cares about winning. I do think he cares about his wrestlers, but maybe when he first retired, maybe he was confused about what an oyakata does.
Well, I imagine he probably didn't know for a long time.
Right.
And then once he found out, I would imagine he wanted to keep that under wraps and not let anyone else know. I think it was Chris Sumo who put a video out talking about how within the January Basho and all of those tabloids were, hearing the rumors after Hokuseiho dropped out. One of the tabloid guys talked to Hakuho over lunch, and they were like, it looks like your wrestler isn't hurt. Like, what's happening here? Is it really his knee? And Hakuho didn't reference the knee. He said this is Hokuseiho's golden opportunity to rethink his behavior and come back a better person. That was his reply. Nothing about health.
Interesting.
I didn't see that written in any of the tabloids, but that's interesting if that's true, because that would suggest that Hakuho knew what was up and was like, I wasn't around often enough. I do not like this. He will not. And that was the thing with Ishiura, too, because Ishiura, I guess, had some sort of fight with Hokuseiho at some point. It was saying, you cannot do this in the ring. You can't. And imagine little bitty Ishiura up against huge bully Hokuseiho.
Yeah.
Saying, I am your coach. I am not going to let you wrestle when you do this.
Right.
That's real hard to handle.
I can say from my experience, when I worked in Japan, this is the only the other thing that I thought about is that when we had an issue, and I was working for a big company at the time, we went to our manager, and our manager chose to not relay our complaints up the chain, which is exactly what we wanted. And it is a very American point of view. It's like, no, then if it's not solved, then you go to your boss. But what I found out from friends who were there is that it would be lacking on that manager's part that they could not solve the problem themselves. So I do find that it might be in some crazy world possible that the people complained to who they were supposed to complain to, and then those people did not value it enough to relay the severity to Hakuho.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what happened to me. I'm not saying that that's what happened to them.
Let's hope
but
people were not
it gets muddied and kind
you
of
around with insecticide and lighters.
Well,
Goodness.
and somebody can just be like, it's hijinks. And maybe Hakuho heard it was hijinks or it was mild.
Yeah.
But somebody else was like, well, I'm in charge when he's out the door. I mean, Hokuseiho could not have been in charge with the whole place, considering there's other coaches who have seniority on
they
him.
would have at least been there for practice.
Right.
Who knows? After practice, in free time, maybe that's when all this was happening.
Right.
I mean, who knows?
Right. But you don't grow up just being a psycho. I mean, there are some people who are just psycho, but you learn this behavior from somewhere. And I kind of blame it on the system in which he came up in. I don't think this is the first time we've had a abusive person in sumo. And
I will
I think
also say
looking the other way happens a lot.
it does, yeah. But I mean, a whole bunch of guys in their late teens, early 20s, I can see how practical jokes, like gluing somebody's wallet together, I can see how that could be a funny practical joke.
Right.
That's hilarious. You know, we'll
Right.
get your money out later.
Right.
But it's when that builds and builds and builds to a point where you're hurting people, that's
Yeah.
a big problem.
Yeah.
It's tough when Hakuho became a Yokozuna, and his own training sounds awful. I mean, he's talked about how he was beaten with a metal bat
Right.
as well. And with
If someone came
implements.
into us and said that to us, we would be like, I'm sorry, what?
Right.
We would be panicked because that's never happened to us in our entire lives.
Yeah.
But for somebody who saw it maybe more than you would ever need to see that kind of abuse, you might just be like,
It's
oh,
no big
it's
deal.
it's fine. I got through it. They'll
Tough-
get
yeah.
through it. That's the toughening.
yeah.
Toughen yourself up. And we're in this spot now where you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. They're changing it up, which
Yeah.
is good.
It is good. Is that it for
That's
this
all the
hilarious
Sumo Crime Time episode. We are next week going to get into the Banzuke because there's a new guy coming up from the bottom we want to talk about.
Yes.
And, we'll probably go really light next week because this was one of those episodes where we're like, we have to talk about it, but oh my God. Blech.
So until then, have a happy week.
That's right. Don't hurt people around you, please.
Please, 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 please. Until then, I'm Leslie.
I'm Laurie. See you later.
Bye.